Had another great question come through on the channel asking how I juggle both things like triathlon and training for a team sport environment in terms of my umpiring for football. So today I want to take you through how I go about it, but really the fundamental principle of priority when we talk about trying to train for a specific type of sport or event. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Nick here, talking science of endurance and everything sports science in general. Thanks to everyone who's been subscribing, commenting, sharing, jumping in live streams. Really appreciate all of the feedback and support so far up here on the channel. But if you do want to contribute in a little bit more than just doing the basics and stand out from the crowd in things like the comment sections and on live chats by having a little badge next to your name, click the new join button down below, become a part of Team NJ Sports Science, and for less than a coffee a month, you can be part of a little bit extra in terms of the channel. Some extra perks that are going to be coming in the future will be added to the membership, so something to look out for. Also, it just helps support the channel. It's going to help me remove some of the ads off some of these videos as well, so if you don't like watching those and you can't skip through them, if we can get rid of those, I know it's going to be best for everyone. So if you want to join on the membership, keep supporting the channel and supporting what we're doing here in terms of educating on the science of endurance and sports science in general, consider hitting that join button and join Team NJ Sports Science down below. As I said in the introduction, today's video really stems off a question asking a bit more about my personal situation, but I know a lot of athletes out there, particularly endurance athletes, are going through similar things where they might be training typically for a team sport where they play football, soccer, rugby, basketball, whatever it might be. In my circumstance, I field umpire Australian rules football. So that's what I do middle of the year or most of the year. Really, January right through to September is pretty much taken up with all of my priority is based on that. And then the rest of the time I do triathlon. I enjoy going out and swimming. I've always been a reasonable swimmer. I enjoy getting out on the bike for something different, and I've already got the running fitness there, so I may as well put all the three together and go and compete in an event. So usually I try and get a few sprint races away and maybe a longer course race over the last year I did anyway. I was aiming for one this year. Might not happen with everything that's happened with COVID, race cancellations. But how do I balance all of that? And is it possible to train for two very different sports, one being triathlon and what we might call a team sport in this circumstance? Can I train for both at the same time? And really the question that was being asked me was, can I do this when I'm training for things like a 70.3 or just triathlon in general, or if it's if you like to do cycling but you also like playing basketball, these types of things, you definitely can do it. But what I guess warn is the issue is at some point you have to be prioritizing one over the other. If you're in the middle of a season, so for me, middle of the year, middle of winter, I'm umpiring, I've got all of that as my focus. I'm not really worried about triathlon. I barely swim throughout the middle of the year when I'm in my football mode or my team sport mode, if you like. Barely swim, might do one or so bike sessions a week, and it's just a bit of maintenance here and there. Maybe I'll swim every couple of weeks just to try and change it up and give me a bit of a different stimulus throughout the year. Give me something a little bit more interesting to do other than running all the time. Might use it as a bit of a recovery session and again, do something different. But then as soon as that season finishes, once I get through the final series and I'm done for the year, take a couple of weeks off, obviously, to reset and reload. But then I get into triathlon, and that's where I start to bring back in more of the bike. I actually drop the running load a little bit so I can really pump up the bike volume and the swim volume. Allows me to transition into triathlon pretty well and maintain as much of my running. But then again, coming back to that point on priority, it's all about where my priorities fall. My priority isn't with triathlon. And for some of you who might be a little bit pained to hear that my priority isn't in a traditional endurance sport, it's not. My personal athletic endeavors are more in the umpiring side of things, and that's what I want to pursue as a career at the elite and professional level. So it's the type of thing that I have to put all of my priority into that. Triathlon really for me is something to keep fit and keep me going over off season, allow me to go and explore some other things, get on the bike a bit more, go out and train with some of the athletes that I work with and engage in the community in person as best I can. I also live pretty close to Beach Road, so everyone who knows the Melbourne cycling scene or triathlon scene, I mean, I'm pretty close to where it's all happening at the moment anyway, so heading down to the end of the street is where I'm able to jump on the bike and just go for it for a few hours when things open up after COVID. So it's the type of thing, I use it more as an off-season conditioning, build some aerobic capacity, and the byproduct is, because I'm doing some multi-sport stuff, I can go and race, and because I've got a reasonable fitness from all the team sport stuff I've been doing from a running perspective and a bit of high intensity, I just tune up a little bit for triathlon, and I can perform reasonably well. By no means am I a professional or an elite racer when it comes to triathlon, and I don't necessarily get to the top of categories. I used to when I was like 15, 16, be able to win races, but very different scenario now that I actually have to race in sort of higher age group categories where people are taking that seriously as their main sport, and that's fine for me. I'm okay with that. I still perform reasonably well. Last year went sub 5 hours in my first 70.3, so I'm not performing too badly, and I sort of take that. And maybe in personally, I think maybe can I do better, but it's the type of thing that with the limited time I have to focus on triathlon, and because it's not really my number one priority, I'm not too concerned. As long as I can get through and enjoy the process, that's more where I'm after. It's very difficult to prioritize two things at once. And like anyone knows, anytime you try to do two things at once, it's very difficult to do. If you're doing all your work in the office, for example, you're sitting at home at your home office for now, doing your work, and then you're trying to have a very different conversation with someone else at the same time. It's difficult to multitask. That's the same thing with training. It's difficult to have team sport specific training in the circumstances we're talking about here. I'm doing a lot of change of direction. I'm doing a lot of repeat sprinting and maximal velocity sprinting. I'm doing a lot of decision making and skill aspects to the game as well. As much as I'm not playing and I'm umpiring, I still have to know how to bounce the football to start the game. That's a skill in itself. Positioning on the ground, the decision-making component, as I said, all of these are skills I need to work on and prioritize. The strength conditioning aspect is slightly different because we're more working on really high intensity, lots of rest breaks. Moving into triathlon, it's quite different. So if I was trying to do all that volume, I'd probably find I'd break down really, really quickly because I just don't have the turnarounds mid-season. Because it is quite taxing when you're doing lots of high-intensity work. I mainly have 2 really key running sessions throughout the middle of the week during the year, and then I have my game day, and that's 2 hours of chaos, 16 odd Ks of majorly high intensity running interspersed with some recovery periods and some quarter time breaks, etc. And that goes for any other team athlete as well, team sport athlete as well, or if you're playing, if you're umpiring, whatever it might be. So like I said, prioritize what is more important to you. If triathlon is more important to you and you're just playing sort of social sport, you can definitely flip this on its head and majorly focus your work on the triathlon side of things. Yes, you might not be performing as much as you want to be in that team sport environment, but if it's just a social type thing, you're just kind of playing with mates who are just trying to enjoy yourself, you can definitely focus on the triathlon because the aerobic endurance and the aerobic fitness is going to transfer over reasonably well. Maybe just consider some of the things in terms of your loading with change of direction, jumping, sprinting, all of that might be happening in that team sport environment. Just be mindful if you're not getting that exposure in your training for triathlon, which you probably aren't, you might be putting yourself at risk of things like rolling ankles, maybe some hamstring strain type stuff if you're doing max velocity or max sprinting. But for the most part, if you're not really worried about elite high performance in a team sport setting, and you're more worried about that in endurance, whether it's triathlon, cycling, running, whatever it might be, you can definitely train for both to an extent, or play both, or be involved in both at the same time. But we've just flipped the priorities around. So I guess the theme for today, and in a bit of summary, keeping it quite short, priority is everything. If you're trying to do multiple things, even within triathlon, we've got 3 different sports. For some people, improving their swim is much more of a priority than getting better at running because their running is probably pretty rock solid and they may not be able to improve too much more in terms of race time. They might be already smashing it and absolutely dominating there on race day, but to take it to that next level, it's the swim that needs to be priority. So maybe we reshape the week and how we look at it. This goes across everywhere. Priority, once you understand what is your number one priority and having a clear single focus, you can start to have some sub focuses if you like, or some other goals in and around that. But really, you have to have that one critical area that you're going to spend majority of your time on, and that's going to lead you much further down a direction of performance and success than if you try and tackle too many things at once, because that spreading yourself too thin is never a good idea in terms of overall fatigue. Being able to recover from too many things at once is also very difficult, but then also it's just hard to get those clear adaptations in potentially very different areas of our physiology. Like I said, trying to train repeat sprint is very different to trying to train long, slow endurance. They're polar opposites of the spectrum. So we need to then consider, well, what are our training focuses and work on how can we improve that specific performance. Again, priority is the way to do that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight in terms of what I do. Like I said, triathlon for me is off-season conditioning, but for you, if that's your main sport and you like to do some social activity as well and social sport is in and amongst it, let me know how you sort of balance that as well down in the comments below. Always happy to hear the thoughts of the community and what you're thinking in this sort of space. Like I said, this is just my example, but I'm happy to hear yours as well. As always, continue to keep supporting the channel by hitting the share button. Share this with someone else who might be in a similar situation to me, trying to balance a couple of different sports throughout the entire year. Also, continue to subscribe to the channel. It's the best way we can continue to grow this great community. Looking forward to seeing some of you on the live streams as well in the not too distant future. And as I said earlier in the video, consider hitting that join button. If you're getting a lot of great value out of these videos, you're resonating with some of the content up here, you're learning something along the way, click on that join button, join Team NJ Sports Science and help continue to grow this community and grow this channel. Plenty of great perks coming on top of the ones that are already there. If anything, the little badge next to your name as a member is going to help me easily identify you in the live stream chat, but then also in the comments down below, and I'll be able to respond to you a hell of a lot faster, and most likely going to get to your questions first if I do see that badge next to your name, because I actually get a separate notification for it. So go and click on that join button if you're interested. Always grateful for the support on the channel. That is it for today, and we'll see you in the next one.